Imagine, a podcast series by Imagine Theatre.
Yes, hello again and welcome to episode 134 of the Just Imagine podcast series, and this time we're going to chat to an illusionist, puppeteer, actor and screenwriter who's best known as Sooty's right-hand man.
For more information, go to their website at www.imaginetheatre.co.uk.
Now, in the last episode, I was joined by Imagine's joint CEO, Sarah Bowden, for the second in our series looking at a year in the life of a producer. Don't worry if you missed it or any of the other previous episodes, because they are all still available. So check them out where you normally get your podcasts, and while you're at it, subscribe to the series so that you don't miss any future episodes. Well, once again, this time I'm delighted to say that I've been joined by the illusionist, puppeteer, actor and screenwriter who's been working with the much-loved puppet Sooty since 1998. So, Izzy Wizzy, let's get busy with Richard Cadell. How are you?
Martin, thanks for having me on. I'm fantastic, thanks. Really good. I'm very excited to talk to you.
Yes, in fact, we were reminiscing a moment ago, weren't we, before we started this recording, because it's something like 40 years since we first worked together.
Yes, in fact, we haven't spoken for 40 years. Not that there's been any bad blood or anything, but no, it was, we were both, virtually kids, weren't we, really? I mean, I was a teenager. We were both at Radio Leicester, weren't we, making tea and coffee in a bid to, which is how you sort of got your foot in the door. You made tea and coffee, you fetched guests in and out of the studio, and eventually somebody gave you a little break on the air, and I think we both did that.
We certainly did, and you were still at school. I'd just left university, but even then I always remember your first love was magic, because of course you were Young Magician of the Year.
I was the Magic Circle's Young Magician of the Year. I was 15, which is how I came to be part of Radio Leicester, because I was interviewed when I won that competition, and I kind of just hung around in the studio, never went home, and that's how that all happened. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I'd always been loving magic ever since I was a little kid. 5 or 6 years old, I was doing magic and puppet shows. I mean, it's all I've ever really known, and it's stayed with me all through my life.
And where did all that come from? Because as far as I remember, at least one of your parents was a doctor, so there was no showbiz in the family, was there?
Well, my mum was an actress. And she was quite snobby, actually. She used to say, the equity should never have merged with the VAF, which was the variety artist, because I was effectively a variety artist. I was a bit of a turn, I tell you what happened. I had a magician to my party. It's a lovely story, actually, a quick one. I was about 4 years old, and we had Uncle Brian, who used to go and entertain most of the kids in Leicester with his magic show. And, that was it. I knew I wanted to be doing the show and not being the little kid helping. And the lovely story is I quoted this on a few occasions, and subsequently became a huge friend of Uncle Brian and became the best man at his wedding many years later. Wow. So that was lovely. But, it was having a magician to the party. Then I got a magic set. And away I went, that was it.
So it was a lot of time spent on your own learning the tricks and so on, because it takes a hell of a lot of work, to get to any sort of standard, let alone to win Young Magician of the Year.
Well, I'll tell you what happened, actually. Because I said my mother was an actress. I was a child actor through her encouragement in a play. And one of the guys in the play playing my father, the next play he was due to be in, he was going to play the magician in the play, and he was having lessons from the member of a magic circle. And I found this incredible, that somebody from the magic circle would teach magic. And I was having piano lessons as a kid, and I hated it. And I said to my mum, can I part X these piano lessons for magic lessons? So the actor gave my mother the name of the magician, Brian Glover his name was, who was teaching this actor. And I became, one of his pupils. So I learned in the way of kids, I had after-school lessons. I had after-school lessons in magic. So, it was incredible. I loved it. Couldn't wait for Fridays when Brian would come around and teach. It was like, I'm going to learn a new trick this week. It was brilliant.
So as a kid, while you were performing and learning magic tricks and so on, do you remember going to see Panto? In fact, do you remember the first Panto you ever went to see?
100%. 100%. And I had much that same feeling. It was the Little Theatre.
Mm-hmm.
My mother took me and led Little Theatre in Leicester. And I was picked to go on the song sheet. I was one of the 6 kids, and we sang Gilly Gilly Yoss and Fefe, whatever it is, the one. And at the end of it, I was given a packet of jelly tots, and I refused to open these tots and eat them. And I wanted Simple Simon to come to my birthday party. I fell in love with the whole thing. Yeah, and even then you kind of know I want to be part of that world. I remember it vividly. As I talk to you now, I can picture the scenery, the set, what he was wearing, and yeah, and it's wonderful. I obviously, we're going to talk about panto, and I've done many since, and I present the song sheet on most of the pantos I do, and the last thing I ever say when I give the kid the equivalent of the jelly tots is I say, you're going to talk about this and remember this moment for the rest of your life, and you do, and children who do those song sheets, they do, and I did. So anyway, there you go.
Did you ever perform in a panto as a kid? Were you ever in a junior ensemble or one of the babes?
No, I was very lucky. First panto I was in, I played Idle Jack because I was doing my kids' parties with the magic show. And the producer saw me at one of these kids' parties and thought, he'd be good. Yeah, I was only 15 and learnt so much, I learnt so much. So, I went straight in. I was very lucky, really. I was never a babe. Sadly, they don't have babes so much anymore, which is such a shame. No, I went straight in with a comic role.
One thing's for sure is the impact that panto has on kids. It may actually inspire them to perform and to go into theatre as a career, but it will almost certainly inspire them to go and see more things at the theatre. So the impact it has is incredible, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't know how many I've done now. I've lost count. Well over 30, probably 40 pantos. Absolutely. And I mean, I want to give you an example because I'm very lucky to have performed in some wonderful pantomimes. I played Buttons not long ago at the Theatre Royal in Nottingham. Craig Revel Horwood, I think, was the anyway, it was a big show, and the end of the act one, you fly over the audience in the coach and ponies, an incredible prop, twins effects prop, and I look down as I'm sat on this coach, and there's three little girls dressed up as princesses, and they're looking up at Cinderella, who's waving at them, and I'm waving at them as we fly over the audience, and they're crying with happiness. You can see the tears, and it started to make me cry, and I thought, these kids are going to, in their world now, Cinderella, they're going to take this memory and it's going to stay with them. They're crying with happiness. We're having that much of an effect on people. And anyone who's in the panto business, they know what I'm saying. I mean, lots of people listening to this will know this. We are so privileged to give these children escapism and ignite their imaginations and take them to this happy world. It's such an honour, such a privilege, and I've never tired of it, clearly. But that moment will stay with me.
So by this stage, you were forging out several different careers. You were doing some radio, of course, you were doing panto, and this is the age of 15 or 16. But again, your real love is still magic, isn't it? So, and in a way, I guess it's magic that led you to Sooty. But how did your career progress from that 15, 16-year-old onwards?
I wanted to do, I became a full-time professional entertainer. Panto's obviously only Christmas, and I wanted to do a summer season. So I developed the Magic Act, and I'd always been a big fan of David Copperfield and those big American illusionists. And I tried a few summer seasons, and I was doing very standard kind of magic tricks that I think a lot of people have seen before. And a friend of mine said, if you're going to stand out, if you're going to make it, you need to do something really big. And that's when I thought, okay, I'm going to build a vanishing motorcycle illusion. And it was the biggest, at the time, and I'm going back 30-something years, no one had ever done anything on that scale in the UK. And once I introduced this big trick, this motorcycle flew into a cage, it was hoisted in the air, and the cage exploded effectively, and the bike vanished with me on it. And then I rode in from the back of the theatre a few seconds later. I mean, it was a groundbreaking moment in magic in this country, very standard in the USA. All the big American illusionists have done stuff far better already, but in this country it was a big deal. And it just took off. That trick made me. I did great summer seasons. And of course, from that, I thought, well, I'm going to need a few more tricks now. And then I built some more big illusions. And I sort of went down the illusion path. Big spectacular stuff, and without making, jumping all over the place timeline-wise, when I became the presenter of the Sooty show, I stopped doing the big illusions. I didn't need the big illusion act. I quite focused on Sooty. But what's wonderful about still doing the pantomimes is that it enables me to bring some of those wonderful props out of storage, and for 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever it is at Christmas, I get to do my illusions again. you know, as part of the panto, we sort of throw them in, shoehorn them in subtly. So I still get to play with the big stuff as well as doing the Sooty show.
Yeah, I love that, and I think there probably could or should be more illusions in panto in general, because they really add something spectacular, something that is a surprise for the audience. And magic's been an important part of your life. Of course, you're a Gold Star member of the Inner Magic Circle, past president of the British section of the International Brotherhood of Magicians. And as you said, it was magic that led you to Sooty, because you may have watched Sooty as a kid on television, but long before you took over working with Sooty on a regular basis, I think it was Christmas back in 1985 that you first appeared on the Sooty show. It was called Sooty & Co. at the time. And that was your first experience of working with him, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd been on the Sooty show, as you rightly say. It's on YouTube, embarrassingly so. It's a Christmas special. I'm about 16, 17. And I come in and dressed as Father Christmas, the youngest Father Christmas ever, and reveal myself to be Richard the Magician and do a card trick. But I'd loved the Sooty show because Sooty did a lot of magic. And as a kid, you know, I loved magic. And if you wanted to watch magic on kids' TV, well, you know, the Sooty show was a good place to go. So I was totally starstruck meeting Matthew Corbett and all the people behind the scenes when I did that little guest spot. And it was bizarre, really. I was doing a big summer season in Blackpool Grand Theatre with a big variety show. And I was doing all the big illusions. You know, by that point I was doing a water tank thing and some big levitation thing and the motorcycle, of course. So all this huge, big props. And my agent at the time called me up and he said, so I'm fast forwarding now, I'm jumping. I'm now 20 years ahead of that TV show I did with Sooty. And he said, do you remember you did the Sooty show 20 years ago? I said, yes. He said, well, are you sitting down? I went, well, what do you want? He said, well, Matthew Corbett's retiring. They want a magician to take over. They remembered you. You are in the frame. It was such a curveball. I was trying to be the UK's answer to David Copperfield. And, you know, I thought, me working with a teddy bear doing kids stuff? God, I've done kids parties for years, you know. What? But they didn't want a children's presenter. They wanted somebody that, you know, they didn't want that stereotypical kids presenter. So when I got the job, that was when I said, right, I don't have to do the illusions anymore. I don't have to drive through the night with a lorry load of props and pay 6 girl assistants and 2 boys, and you know, I can just turn up with a little tiny box and go just as well with Sooty. So it was a life-changing moment, and one that I still pinch myself, really, that I ever got into the position to do it. And I know we touched on the presenting stuff that we both did together at Radio Leicester, but absolutely, when I got the Sooty show, some of those skill sets from the radio show, people don't realise this, I hope you find this interesting, but we both know as radio presenters that you often have to talk to time and fill air seamlessly. Or with the Sooty show, so much of the stuff is tracked and cued, like Sweep and Sue, especially the live stuff. You have to sort of seamlessly fill the air and make it flow. And the techniques I learned as a kid in that radio studio alongside you, there was I absolutely drew on all of that for the Sooty show. It was great. Yeah.
Now here's a question which you may not know the answer to, because we've talked about your panto career and the 30 or 40 that you've done over the years. Do you have any idea how many Sooty has done?
Do you know what? Actually, no, because Matthew Corbett and Harry, they did the Christmas show. They did the Sooty Christmas show, yeah. They didn't share it. Matthew Corbett sort of licensed Sooty out a few times during his tenure. But actually, Sooty has only really come into panto since I got involved, because, of course, I was playing comic roles in panto. And as soon as I got involved with the Sooty show, the people I were working for said, well, let's have Richard and Sooty. And it's been great. So I would say, I mean, I must have done 10 or 15 with Sooty, I'm guessing. Probably Matthew did 10 before that, potentially. So maybe only 20, 25. But he's absolutely brilliant in pantomime, Sooty and Sweep. It's just such a great fit for that genre, because everybody knows it. Little kids still watch it, and of course the grandparents know it. And, you know, it's such a great, and of course with Izzy Wizzy Get Busy, the magic wand, we can use magic throughout the story to right wrongs and fix the baddie in the end. And so Sooty plays a really good role within the storyline. So it does really work.
And all the way through Sooty's career with Harry in the 1950s, on to Matthew, and then with yourself, there have always been panto elements in the Sooty show, and of course the Christmas specials as well, where there was probably even more of a panto influence. And that's probably one of the reasons why Sooty and panto work so well together, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the Sooty stage show is like a panto. It's very slapstick. This TV show is littered slapstick. I'd love to see more slapstick in panto. I'd love to see more people. A lot of panto producers, they're very frightened about it. I'm lucky enough. I work for Crossroads. The most years, in fact, every year for the last how long? And of course, they're one of the formidable producer. But it's very hard to try and convince them to do slosh, because they get Clive and Danny doing it up in Newcastle, and Clive and Danny Adams are fantastic slosh, the best in the business, but they don't half make a mess. I mean, it's, if you're going to do it, my thing is, if you're going to do a slosh, you've got to do it. You can't have a little tickle on the nose with a bit of shaving foam. You've got to paste. You've got to throw the paste around. So Clive and Danny do it, and they make such a mess that whenever I suggest, please, can we do a slosh? He goes, oh no, it's it's just such a nightmare for them. But I think we should see it. I love it when I see a panto with a good slosh scene, because I know all the effort that goes into it backstage, and then the clean-ups and the costume changes, but it's great. It's great. I wish I could do a bit more of that.
Now, long before you bought the rights for Sooty, I think your first real regular presentation role was in the final series of Sooty and Co. Now, like panto, Sooty has had to evolve over the decades from the 50s onwards. So I wonder how you did that. How did you manage to bring Sooty up to date and continue that evolution?
Well, Matthew Corbett was a genius in keeping it relevant. That's why it was on TV for so long. I mean, this is such a long conversation, really. I'm going to try and give you the bullet points. I mean, when I first took over, I was just working for ITV as their presenter. I had no writing input. I had no creative control at all. And then in 2008, the rights came for sale, and I purchased the rights along with my brother, which was a big commitment for us. And the challenge, because ITV was sort of said, well, what are you going to do with it? How can you keep it modern and fresh? And that was indeed the challenge, to keep it moving. So what we did was take Sooty out of the house a lot more. I mean, Matthew's day, it was very much set in the house. They used to go out, now and again, they'd pop down the shops or they'd go somewhere, but most of it was studio based. Now, when I took over, for me, Sooty and Sweet work great in the real world, when they're in real, situations, in real shops and real, so actually we'd spent very little time in our house, and all the time out in the real world at farms and theme parks and schools, and the stories were centred around that. So that's what I did, and it seemed to work. I mean, it's been on ITV for, I've done it for 20 odd years. It's still on. They still show the episodes on ITVX. You can watch them right now. Yeah, so I put it in the real world, I think. But the trick is to keep it moving, and lots of jokes, lots of slapstick. I always said the Sooty show is never there to educate people. A lot of kids shows these days, they tend to try and give a moral message or teach something. I said, no, let's just make the kids laugh. They've been to school, they've done that bit for the day. Let's have some raspberries, throw a few pies, and let's make fun of the adults, and that's what we do.
Yeah, light entertainment for kids, and the characters, I think you kept them all. I remember, obviously Sooty, Sweep and Sue. Sue originally voiced by Harry's wife, I think. Scampy, I think, was Sooty's cousin.
Sooty's cousin. I don't use Scampy so much. I bring him in and out. I keep him for special occasions, Scampy.
Butch, I remember, but the one, I don't know where the name came from, but the one I always titter when I hear it is the snake called Ramsbottom.
I'm now the voice of Ramsbottom. Well, I'm giving it all away, aren't I? But yes, I use Ramsbottom, the northern snake. They had loads. They had a robot called Henry, Butch the bulldog. I love Butch. 3 Nice Mice. They've had a few. Kipper the cat. But I mean, there's been lots of people come and go over the years. I mean, but Sooty, Sweep and Sue have been the 3 that just the full timers. Mm-hmm. The most bizarre thing when I first got hold of the rights, writing a script. Because you've got your 3 main characters. One of them doesn't have any lines at all, and one of them just squeaks. How do you write that script? But it was crazy.
Now, we mentioned the fact that panto elements had an influence on the Sooty show, but I wonder whether your experience of panto helped you when it came to writing the scripts.
Oh, yes. 100%. I mean, there are panto routines within the episodes, 100%, you know. Definitely. I mean, definitely. And also, you're aware of an audience watching at home. And I do a lot of breaking the fourth wall where I look down the barrel of the camera. In which you'd perform to an audience of kids watching in a theatre. I'm mindful that there's kids watching at home, so I sort of play that card. Yeah, lots of slapstick, so definitely similarities.
Now, one thing I did want to ask you is when it comes to pantomime performance, everybody talks about it has to be exaggerated, it has to be larger than life, it has to be big. And I wonder how you marry that when working with a small puppet that doesn't speak. Do you have to overcompensate? You know, what can you do to make sure that Sooty actually works with an audience in that sort of situation?
No, not at all. If anything, it's an art form. It's a bit like magic. The trouble is, because Sooty, I mean, I've got lots of sort of stock answers for this, because people often say, well, you know, he's so small in a big theatre, how does it play? Well, he's bigger than an actor's face, and you never sit at the back of the theatre and question that you can't see the expression or the emotion on an actor's face. So Sooty's movements are really very easy to see. The trick, actually, is when I'm on stage with Sooty in pantomime, I stay relatively still and I look at him as I'm talking to him, and anything he's doing, I look. So the focus is very much on him, because my movements as a human I've only got to jump up and down, and that's far bigger than ever he can do. So that's why Sooty's yellow is very bright. So when I do the Sooty stage show, he's the brightest thing on the stage. The scenery is quite muted. But the trick is to actually sort of dumb down a bit when Sooty's on, and let him be the life and soul. And then when he drops below the counter and you're lead comic, then you go crazy and bang, you're right into the audience. You can go as big as you like then, but you have to sort of downplay it a bit when Sooty's on and allow him to do it. But it works in absolute. It storms in panto, particularly when he brings a water pistol out, soaks the audience. You know, it's fantastic.
Over the 30 or 40 years that you've done panto, you've worked with some of the biggest names in show business, but I have to say sometimes Sooty is billed higher than them.
Well, do you know what's great? Every time the panto bills are announced, even now, I'm doing Milton Keynes this year with Alexandra Burke. It's going to be great. Directing it as well, which is going to be an absolute honour to direct her and put that together. But you go on the socials, and this happens every year. They all go, when they announce the cast, Sooty and Sweep, Sooty and Sweep, Sooty and Sweep, Sooty and Sweep. Happens every year. They never mention me. They never did the top. I was with Will Young last year. So Sooty and Sweep, Sooty and Sweep. There's such an outpouring of love for them. So yeah. And when he first comes on, they go crazy. The audience go crazy.
And you've added so many more strings to your bow over the years. We've talked about the writing. You're an executive producer, consultant on other projects as well, and directing. I wonder how directing a panto works for you, because you may have illusions in there. You're working with Sooty. You're playing the comic, and you're directing it. Is that a bit tricky at times?
Yes, I think it is tricky to direct and be in it. It's a real fine balance, because, I want a happy company. I want a really happy company that all gets on off stage. It's really important that you forge that in the rehearsal room, because it does spill over the footlights. You can tell. So therefore, I have to be in charge, but you have to get that fine line of being able to, sort of give direction and be strong without upsetting people, because you've got to work with them. So it can be tricky if you, but I've done it enough now. I think I sort of I get it. But what's wonderful, of course, is to know that you're crafting a show that you're going to be in.
Yeah.
So I like nice, quick, fast shows. I love transitions. I love the way we can flow from one scene to another, and we can, with the right choreography, we can get the dancers to move through the scenery as it changes, and that I love that creation of that. So to be able to sort of cook the cake and know that I'm going to be in it, eating a bit of it, if you will, is a real buzz. Whereas I think if I was just directing and leaving it and walking away from it, I think I wouldn't have quite the same satisfaction.
And in a practical sense, do you have a second pair of eyes? Because it can be really difficult when you're in a show, particularly in the tech and the dress rehearsal, when it comes to giving notes and so on. You need an extra pair of eyes out front to see what's happening, don't you? So do you have a choreographer or an assistant or somebody works with you in that respect?
I do. 3 years in a row now, a fantastic choreographer called Aaron Renfrey, who has done many amazing things, and rightly so. He's brilliant, but he's done so much. But I trusted him completely to be that set of eyes at the last minute. I video everything. I'll video it all, and I'll go back after the rehearsals are finished, and I'll look at everything and give notes. I give notes to myself. In fact, I've learned so much from watching myself on those videos. Think, oh, Richard, why are you doing that there? Why don't you move to the left? Why are you talking there? Why don't you stop and pause? So it's really quite, it's been helpful for me to see it. So I do a lot of video, but yeah, I do rely very much on Aaron. He's great. You need a strong choreographer and somebody you can trust, and we've been a good little team.
And again, you've played so many different comic characters over the years, and some are slightly different. I guess there's more pathos with Buttons, for instance. But does your relationship on stage differ depending on which comic you play?
No, it doesn't. Do you want me to be honest? No, because I do the same stuff every year. A lot of the same. Well, they love what I do, you see. So when I get the script come through, oh, it's that routine. Oh, that one again. Oh, that trick again. Because they love their favourite bits and they write them in. And I suppose you go to a new town, they haven't seen them. And why not do the best bits? So they sort of cherry pick the bits they like. Mm-hmm. But I suppose it does. If Sooty sometimes has more of a story role, depending on the subject. So that can be nice. And it's nice when Sooty interacts with the other cast as well, and that happens. He's got free rein. It's not just, I'm great mates with some fantastic ventriloquists who are brilliant now in Panto, some great names out there. But obviously, their dummies are only ever on with them and interacting with them. The great thing with Sooty and Sweet, I don't have to be there, but they're cast on the show as parts in their own right. So if, Caraboss is plotting an evil spell, Sooty can absolutely pop up next to her and squirt with the water pistol and be part of the sort of the moment. I don't have to be there. So it just work very well with or without me.
Very often we talk about the fact that Panto is one of the few areas that brings all different aspects of the profession together, whether that be speciality acts like jugglers or acrobats alongside singers and actors. And I think that's a joy still, isn't it?
Well, it's a variety show. I mean, let's not forget the origins of it. It was a variety show, and you look at those incredible bills, of yesteryear, the Palladium bills. I mean, you've got a singer, you've got a special, you've got a comic, and they're all big stars. But it's a variety show, and you're absolutely right. There's something for everybody, and yes, it's wonderful to bring in everybody's skill set and try and weave a story around it. That's the clever thing. There have been occasions, let's be honest, where Panto producers will the story can play a second place within the, they're worried about delivering the pop stars song or the comedian's routine, and the story can be slightly not forgotten, but almost not be seen as important. One of the nice things that Crossroads let me do is when I direct is I fight for to really tell the story, because kids don't know who some of these people are, So as much as it's a variety show and everybody gets to do their spot, I do try and weave a story through it so that the children go away with the sense of, knowing what the story was about.
Yeah, that's the most important thing, isn't it? With a younger audience, they have to be engaged with the story. They have to go on that adventure with you. And with that in mind, one question I ask everybody on this podcast is, Richard, what's your favourite Panto title?
Well, can I sort of say two? I mean, well, only for me as personally, and I know any comic that you talk to is going to say Buttons. Cinderella for me is the best Panto because there's a good story, there's moral to the story, and for me as Buttons, I love the pathos bit. The audience love you even more because you don't get the girl, and there's all of that the wonderful ticket tearing scene, and you've got double whammy with the uglies. It's not two baddies in there. And so it's the best story. But when I went to see Panto years ago, I saw John Inman in Mother Goose, and Mother Goose is a belting story, and that's so I mean, it's not often done anymore because it all hinges on Mother Goose, so it's getting the right person to play that. But it was great. It was really good.
I think you're absolutely right. And one of the things we talk about on this podcast series on a regular basis is that the most popular panto titles seem to be ones that have been made into Disney movies. I've done Mother Goose twice, and it has everything. It's nice for a change that the dame is the protagonist. It has a moral, as you say. It has a story that the kids probably don't know as well because it's never been a Disney movie. But it's a real shame that because it's not as well known as some of the other titles by the kids, maybe the tickets don't sell as well, and it's a big risk for producers to take, isn't it?
Let's not forget, it is a business, show business. It's a business, and these panto producers, and I actually did produce panto for a while. I did it quite successfully with a very esteemed name of a producer called Barry Stead, who worked for many years on some of the biggest pantomimes. I was lucky to partner with him for a few years, and it's tough. It's really tough producing pantos. They're very expensive. This myth that panto producers make millions. Let me tell you, it's a myth. There's a little bit of something left if you're lucky at the end of it. You've got to cut your cloth very carefully because you want it to be the best. And everything costs so much. And the theatres are very reliant on their cut because that often keeps their theatre going for the whole year. So that everybody has to get a slice of it. For us, Peter Pan was a very strong selling title. We were lucky enough to have Brian Blessed work for us as Captain Hook. Brian Blessed as Captain Hook and Peter Pan was our bestseller. Snow White was strong, followed by Cinderella. And those were our go-to three. We didn't, the Aladdins and Dick Whittingtons and all of that. We didn't really bother with them because they didn't sell as many tickets. So there you go. You have to, unfortunately, if you're running a business, you have to give people what they want.
Okay, well, let's finish this episode with one pretty straightforward question, Richard. What is it you love most about panto?
Oh God. Oh, such an addictive thing. I suppose it's a bit tricky because there's so many things. There's selfish things I love because I love being in it. I think I've got the best gig of the whole thing. To be able to walk out and be that person central to the story. The audience are watching. I get to do it and watch it and be part of it every night. But I think for me, it comes back to what we said earlier. You're giving those children, the audience of tomorrow, the performers of tomorrow, the theatre goers of tomorrow, you're giving this incredible slice of magic at a very magical time of the year, so all their emotions are heightened, and you give them something that money can't buy. They go away with that wonderment, and to be able to be part of that process, for me, as I said, it's a privilege, and everyone involved in the panto business, I'm sure, is aware of that. We're just so lucky We're lucky it exists. And I've got so many friends from abroad, I haven't got a clue what panto is. You try and explain it, and in the end you give up and you think, you know what, I'm not going to try. We're so lucky to have it. You haven't got it, but we've got it, and we love it, and it's a beautiful thing.
Well, listen, we wish you all the very best for the forthcoming pantomime season this year in Milton Keynes. Richard, thank you so much for talking to us.
An absolute pleasure.
And once again, we've run out of time, I'm afraid. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast series. Don't forget there are many more fabulous guests still to come, so make sure you subscribe now. And join me, Martin Ballard, for episode 135, when I'll be talking to Joe Pasquale and Liam Dolan to discuss the stock pantomime character of the comic.
Thank you for listening to the latest edition of Just Imagine, the podcast series from Imagine Theatre. And you can find out more by going to www.imaginetheatre.co.uk.